60s on Thursday, middle 60s for Friday. You see Paletto Junior Point,
So,
1460
that's on the left
WVRX,
side?
the Whitney Global Media Station.
There you go.
Thank you for joining us on 1460 WVOX, America's great community radio station where many different voices are heard in the land. Opinions expressed on our community and open line programs are not necessarily those of the station, its management, or sponsors. As always, we're privileged to amplify the voice of the people here on Vox Populi 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com for you and yours.
1460
I can do the music.
WVOX.
Let me see what I do. Focus on the mics.
Sure. I'll focus on that.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're listening to the Cam Vets Radio Report on WVOX 1460 and around the world on WVOX.com. This is Jack McGurk with Ken Fraser bringing you this half hour of discussion of issues related to veterans in the active military. Now, here's Ken.
Hey, Jack. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone listening to Cam Vets Media here on WVOX in Rochelle. It is definitely got that fall feel in the air today. Yesterday, my wife and I were in New York City to participate in the Tunnel to Towers run. That being a race that starts in Brooklyn over by Red Hook and then proceeds down the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel all the way through, about a mile and a half, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming out in Lower Manhattan, and all to remember the route that fireman Stephen Stiller took on 9/11 to try to do what he could when the World Trade Center was attacked. He was on an off day and grabbed his equipment and ran through the tunnel to Lower Manhattan, went in a building and perished, trying to save the lives of many New Yorkers and people in the two World Trade Center towers. So great event, foundation, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, massive event, about 20,000 people. I actually took a ferry boat from Lower Manhattan, where we parked, to Red Hook. And then lots of high school kids participating, colleges. Wagner College had quite a few, the Maritime College down in the Bronx that I just happened to see. West Point said, I understand over 1,000 runners, and also had had a couple hundred freshmen carry American flags. When you came out of the tunnel, there was this enormous greeting on either side of the path as you kind of meandered through this course set up in the World Financial Center in Lower Manhattan, and just lined with firemen, with posters, banners of the pictures of the firemen lost on 9/11, and then all sorts of ROTC and junior ROTC cadets and midshipmen along the route. Very, very high energy, and all to raise money. The group supports scholarships for families, children of fallen firefighters, and first responders, and also has been built houses for veterans who have had severe injuries in their service so that they can more easily live. And all sorts of information on that, just go to the website, Tunnel to Towers, and I believe the website is T2T.org. And so congratulations to all the people who put that together for the foundation. So the West Point Band was down there entertaining. But just, it felt like doing, I did the New York City Marathon about 30 years ago, and it felt like finishing that.
Wow.
Except they didn't have to run the 25 miles, they only had to run 3 miles.
Yeah.
So it was a little easier to do. Army was off. We'll be up at West Point on Saturday for their game against, they've got this week Georgia State, who lost to Coastal Carolina this week. A team beat Army recently. So it's going to be a good one. Army wants to get to 2-2. So Jack, you got lots of stories.
Yeah, we'll start off with what's happening in Ukraine. More than 1,300 people were detained across Russia in a crackdown on the anti-war protests, according to a monitoring group. After President Putin announced the partial mobilization, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken told the UN that Russia had shredded international order and called on the world to not let Putin get away with it. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov attacked Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky with a series of dismissive insults. But big story out of that area is that reservists and citizens have been called up to serve in a 300,000 person partial mobilization not seen since World War II. Putin announced that partial mobilization, which would require citizens to join the war effort in Ukraine, also warned Western nations not to attack Russia's territories, which would be met with swift retaliation. And there are stories coming out of Russia that lots of military-aged men are fleeing the country, so they don't have to be called up and drafted.
Yeah, very unpopular, and we're going to have a guest talk about this in more detail second half of the show. Robert Costelli, a Vietnam veteran, former New York State police officer and professor at several schools in criminal justice. On what's happening with this, interesting article by David Brooks in the New York Times yesterday. How do you handle a wounded Putin? And he goes into the losses that the Russians have suffered. 80 to 100,000 Russian troops have been killed or wounded in the past 7 months. 50% of the pre-war military tanks, 20 to 30% of its infantry fighting vehicles, and a tenth of its advanced fighter planes. So they've taken losses which you cannot replace quickly, and you can't, and 300,000 raw recruits aren't going to do them much good for a long time. The military that's successful today are the highly experienced militaries that can use the sophisticated equipment the best. And so far, the Ukrainians have shown tremendous aptitude in and morale and will to fight in their war, and it's paying benefits with their being able to take back some of the land in the September offensive.
Indeed, and the fact that he's called up 300,000 from this draft, the Russians are getting weapons from other countries like Iran and North Korea, and also Putin threatened to use nuclear weapons last week as well. It seems like a lot of big signs of desperation in Russia.
Well, it's a question about what countries are actually supplying Russia. North Korea, in one message, said they were not supplying Russia with weapons. China seems to be backing off. India's a factor. We'll get a little bit more of that from Bob Caselli.
And on top of that, Russia has almost certainly moved its Black Sea fleet Kilo-class submarines from Sevastopol, Crimea, to the Novorossiysk port in Krasnodar according to the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense announced last week. Russia could have up to 4 of these diesel-electric attack boats in the Black Sea, but all of the Kilo class are capable of launching Caliber NK cruise missiles, which sea-launched Calibers have been used in attacks on Ukraine already. But the Caliber missiles mimic the capabilities of the U.S. Tomahawk and land attack missiles, have an estimated range of 1,000 nautical miles, but it seems like they are moving these submarines out of the way. They've already been under attack from the Ukrainians with those Neptune missiles. They sunk the Moskva, which is a huge ship in the Navy. So it seems like the Russian Navy is sort of backing off a little bit.
Well, if they have these capabilities, the submarine-launched cruise missiles, you'd be surprised by they haven't used them already. They do have, I guess this would be one of their reserves. The thing that scares me the most, and we'll ask Mr. Castelli about this, is the nuclear power plant that the Russians control in Ukraine territory, and what that means as far as pushing the Russians out of Ukraine. Is that going to be one of the things they stick to as a bargaining chip?
And switching gears to what's happening with China, the guided missile destroyer Higgins and a Canadian frigate, the HMCS Vancouver, went through the Strait of Taiwan recently. U.S. said in a statement that the joint maneuver demonstrates the commitment of the United States and our allies and partners to a free and open Indo-Pacific. But the Chinese were not happy about that, and also there are recent comments from President Biden saying that the U.S. would defend Taiwan if China were to invade that country. But actually, the day after he made those comments, the White House sort of backpedaled that a little bit. But scary situation there.
Well, that's going to be an ongoing tense area with China building its naval capability and building its rhetoric about wanting Taiwan back into the fold. And of course, Taiwan has been an independent country since World War II, or just after, and is industrialized and one of the major makers of chip components that we use in all of our computers.
Absolutely, we have to keep an eye on that. You've been listening to the Canvas Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this brief Fox News break, so stay tuned.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good job.
With world and national news, here's
So,
the latest
I'm
update
gonna let
from
Michael
Fox